as Nigeria heads into 2025, keeping SMEs alive is of paramount importance to the government. Stable electricity to reduce overhead costs and access to finance to cover working capital are among the top responses from small businesses in Nigeria responding to surveys. One of those, of course, is documented in a new report from Caladium Consulting, which takes a comprehensive look at the business landscape for SMEs in Nigeria. We're happy to have Ayo Bankole Akintujoye, who is the founder of Caladium Consulting, and also the CEO, to discuss this report. DJ, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. You've been doing so much work, Ayo Bankole, on your SME bootcamp, and now you've got this report. What prompted you to put this report together? How long have you been working on it?
Thank you so much for having me, Rotus. I mean, you and the team at Arise have also been doing amazing work, and also thank you for supporting the work that we do. Three things led us to do this. First and foremost is the global context. There is a lot of data globally to show the importance of SMEs. It's not only to Nigeria. I think even the IFC did put out data that globally SMEs are continuously increasing in terms of their contribution to the global economy. Bringing it home in Nigeria, SMEs contribute 48% and it keeps increasing to our economy. And anytime government is trying to put in initiatives or incentives to support the SME ecosystem, you see a disconnect. So the data that is available does not address specifically the key attributes and elements of the SME space. And I mean, as providers and enablers of that ecosystem, it pains us that we keep using generalized information. So we thought that it was important that we are sitting on data. We have over 10,000 SMEs within our community, and we felt that it was important that we provide this data because data solves everything, right? There are no initiatives without verifiable data. So that was what led us to it, and we spent about 2 months and 2 weeks collating that data from SMEs across the country. And you know, the result is what you see today in the Caladium SME report.
We love reports on this, Sean. We know it is not easy putting these things together and also getting data. So let's get into the data you talk about. So you did a survey. As far as the segments or sectors are concerned, I think about the majority coming in from the services sector. You've got 14.35% from agriculture, or actually retail, I think, is second place. No, actually, manufacturing is second place, retail is third, agriculture fourth, and then you've got the others. Is stable electricity, I look at this chart that you've put together, is that the one thing holding them all back from further output?
So electricity is a big issue for everybody. That's what holds, aside access to finance, electricity tops the list. As a matter of fact, our survey did discover that all of them spend about between 30 to 35% of their total capital on power alone.
Wow.
It is completely ridiculous. And it's gotten really worse since the subsidy was removed, especially for micro businesses. If you also look at the survey, you see the sizes of the average SME in Nigeria. And if you have to spend a third of your total capital size on electricity, both startup capital and working capital, then it's a problem because how much are you then going to use to run the business, right? How much are you going to spend on the other things? And that's why we keep saying that before you remove certain subsidies, before you stagger the removal while you fix the infrastructure element of it, because without the infrastructure, you're just going to leave people stranded, and you're going to sink them into deeper poverty.
Gotcha. Another data point was business longevity, and you've got majority of the businesses, 31.9, almost 32%. Have only been in operation for just 1 to 3 years, while just 8% have been in operation over 10 years. What's your takeaway from this data point?
So what this shows is that the risks of doing business in this part of the world is too high. It's a game of the survival of the fittest. You have security, you have inflation, you have FX exposure and volatility. You have infrastructure, even transportation, especially those in agriculture, those in manufacturing. You want to transport from one place to another, half of your goods can be damaged. There's a community member of ours who runs acres of arable land somewhere across the ocean in Lagos State. And just before our boot camp, he showed us pictures and videos of how monkeys and animals had damaged his property just because we are unable to conserve our environment properly. He also shares experiences of how bandits just come on the land and just damage things. There's no way to escalate. So these are things that if you are not resilient, what would happen is over the years, you tend to abandon that business and focus on other things as against growing over the years. So what happens is that you tend to see a lot of uptake in the first years, businesses then, as they grow, as the years go by, more and more of them will keep falling through the cracks and probably just go and apply for a banking job somewhere and, abandon the business. So
what do you think needs to be done to improve the longevity of businesses in the country?
So what needs to be done is government needs to take a look at these reports that Caladium Consulting has done, along with other data organizations who provide reports, work with enablers and clusters across the country to understand the problems of the SMEs, the demographics of the SMEs. Majority of them are micro enterprises. They probably are not registered. They get money amongst themselves. The banks are not providing sufficient capital to them. Now, what we need to do is we need to understand their demographics and solve for their problem at the point of their characteristics. So if most of them are not registered, for example, if you have an initiative that says is only qualified for registered people, you've already excluded. There are only 3 million registered businesses in the CAC portal, and you have over 41 million SMEs in the country. So if it's only registered people that you want to give, that's just 3 million out of 41 million. So there needs to be a way that you use the clusters that they belong to, people who know them, there are cooperatives, there are societies and the funny thing is that these guys take loans among themselves, and these loans are almost zero default, right? Because they know themselves. So government needs to introduce their initiatives through these working systems such that you then monitor the performance of your initiatives over the years and ensure that you are constantly providing stimulus to grow the businesses. And then you incentivize the growth. You incentivize revenue growth. You incentivize profit growth for efficiency. You incentivize staff growth. You incentivize all the multiple layers of efficiency of the organization. And this will definitely result in increased longevity.
Well said, well said. Another stats point, I think about almost 70% rather of the SMEs in your survey have small teams of 1 to 10, and then over half have reported revenue of under 5 million. I don't know which one you want to take first on the work side to the revenue, but what's the takeaway from there on that data point?
So the takeaway is that over 70% of our businesses, our SMEs, are micro and nano. Now, nano usually are the businesses. If you're small, if you earn less than 25 million in a year, you are even nano or micro if you earn less than 10 million. So clearly, majority of them are in the nano and the micro space, right? You know that employee size and revenue size are the two major pillars that you use to define the size of businesses. So what this shows us is that a huge chunk of our SMEs are in that space, and it's not sustainable. They have to grow for the economy to continue to bloom, right? If I start today and I make 5 million and I employ only myself or maybe 2 people, if I go over the next 5 years into a 50 million business, 100 million business with maybe 20 people, that is employment that I'm creating, that is contribution to GDP, and that is contribution to the growth of the economy. But if I'm unable to grow or I fall out of the system, then that's job losses, that's real life issues that affect our business and our economy on a daily basis. And government needs to, take attention to the SME ecosystem so that we can truly improve this economy in the place that matters.
So as a follow-up, if one was to say to you, well, the smaller you are as a business, the more nimble and flexible you are, what would be your response to that?
So that's very true. I'm a strategy professional, and I tell my clients in the startup and SME space that at the very beginning of your business, you require agility, right? You have to keep yourself nimble and agile. But the problem comes where you have gotten to your growth stage, but because of cash flow or capacity, you are unable to expand your team to meet the demand of your work. That's where the problem comes, and that is what our report shows. So it's not that it's not because they are trying to be agile or nimble. It's because the limited cash flow, the limited capacity, the limited capital that they have access to, the lack of infrastructure is straining their cash reserves so much that they are unable to expand their team even when they need to. So that's where the problem is, and that is what we need to solve for.
On the matter of access to finance, your own data jives with every other reports that has been released on this, where we continue for operational challenges. We continue to see again and again that in survey after survey, access to finance continues to remain unknown. So wait, you just gave a perfect example with the 3 million number on the CAC portal versus 41 million. Are there too many SMEs to finance, or, well, I guess too little money to go around? What is, because it keeps coming up, this access to finance matter?
Yeah. So it's a blend of both, to be honest. First, there are too many SMEs, right? But again, you see, cause and effect. Why are there too many SMEs? Because there are less jobs, right? So we are not going into SMEs in Nigeria. We're not starting businesses because we are passionate about entrepreneurship. We're going there because we need to survive, right? So it's either you go into crime or you start a business if there are no jobs out there. However, the little funds that are available, the implementation roadmap is disconnected from the realities of our SME ecosystem. So you have this X amount pot of funds. Two problems. One, the people who are to implement are either giving it to their friends and families, or you just, and the news is, we see it in the news every day, this minister embezzled X amount of money that is meant for relief or SME funds or employment funds. That's the biggest issue. Now, the second issue is the remaining part of the pot that is not stolen, that you want to use, that you want to implement. The channel through which you implement it then goes through the same banks that many times that we are already complaining that their systems exclude the SMEs, right? So you can't have a government intervention, then the banks already have their own intervention. Now yours is supposed to complement it, so you can't then funnel it through the same channels again. Now what has happened is that you transfer all the risks to the banks. The banks then look at your stimulus and say, there's no incentive for me to do this when I have my own product. You can't give me money and say, give it out at less than single digits. Meanwhile, I'm the one that is going to bear all the risk. So the banks just deprioritize government interventions and focus on theirs, which is already high. So what government needs to do is forget the bank strategy, focus on clusters, cooperative societies that these SMEs belong to and that they know them, right? And disburse whatever you have to disburse through these guys. That is the way the implementation, can be best achieved.
Great breakdown. Ayo Bankole, almost out of time, but very quickly, 30 seconds, your outlook for 2025 as far as SMEs are concerned.
So as far as SMEs are concerned, 2025, it's dim from where I sit, except government prioritizes the fiscal leg of the monetary policy reforms. There needs to be the fiscal. I was very excited to see the Port Harcourt refinery has started working. There needs to be increased, massive stimulus for increased production, right? Government has to incentivize production. Government has to subsidize people who are in the production and the real sector chain so that you can create wealth. Government has to fix power. If you fix power, the power ecosystem is bigger than telecommunication ecosystem. And we saw what happened when, we fixed telecoms. So what we need to do is fix power. If we fix power, the SME ecosystem is going to have free cash flows to play with, and then we can multiply wealth. If we do that, then we're on the right path. But if we don't, then, the outlook is dim.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. Great reports. Ayo Bankole Akintujoye, founder, CEO of Caladium Consulting. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.